5 years into Galaxy Grudge Match's run, it's easy to run into ruts. The GGM crew all agreed that the show was in need of something new, but where to go for inspiration? Well, the whole GGM crew agreed to look back onto our magnum opus. The Stretch Royale would be the way to go. And it was there that a big realization emerged. The Dimensional Transmogrifier 9000! We could bring one of our favorite characters into the real world to spice the show up as a host. We each jot down a list of our favorite characters, with the hopes that the magic machine would do its thing and bring forth fiction's best debaters to compete for a spot on the show. Instead, we got these 4 stepping up to compete. Possibly the worst options you could pull from our favorites. The 4 it was narrowed down to were Donald Duck, pitched by Ducko, Eric Cartman, pitched by Max, me, Ryu Hoshi by Brandon, and Cuphead by Ribbit. But how to decide between the 4? Well, who realistically would be the best to have around? Let's hear the current host out to find out the best of the worst. And our next GGM host.
Hello, I'm Ducko. I'm a duck, so of course I must argue for one of the heroes of duckdom, Donald Duck. I have to begin with why he's the most well-rounded and well-suited for the job. Donald Duck has been a long-running and long-standing entertainer, embodying countless roles, with the longest career out of any of the 4 here. Donald has been a sailor, globe-trotting adventurer, soldier, wizard, superhero, ninja, Noah from the Bible, nightclub owner, ghost hunter, and toon actor extraordinaire, as known in Who Framed Roger Rabbit. He's trained with King Arthur and the Greek and Roman gods. He frequently hangs out in South America with his friends Jose and Panchito, and he studies mathematics and music. And adding to his real-world connections, he's even convinced Walt Disney himself to host a Disneyland TV program, and once hosted the Oscars, strange as it is. Which means, out of all the competitors here today, he's the only person here with direct experience in high-pressure hosting gigs alongside real-life humans. Galaxy Grudge Match is honestly going to be a cakewalk for him. Really, nobody else here can boast as many skills, trades, life experiences, and even long-standing popularity and worldwide appeal as Donald Duck. He may have a short temper and some very bad luck, but things seem to eventually work out for him, and, at worst, ultimately teach him a lesson. What most forget is that he usually starts out happy and cheerful, until something comes along and ruins his day. But as long as we in the Galaxy video game keep him happy and don't try to screw up his life, we should be fine, right? All the others except maybe Cuphead arguably have even worse problems in this regard. We aren't 2 shithead chipmunks who later have to do community service as rescue rangers for disturbing a veteran with PTSD. Yes, that is an accurate description of Donald, believe it or not. Donald can be a prankster to those around him as well, and that's honestly not much new for this group. We're always kind of fucking with each other. But like ourselves, Donald will usually see if he's gone too far and become apologetic or try to fix it. He can be selfish, lazy, arrogant, vindictive, and even downright cruel. But he also cares for his friends and his family, has a fun-loving, adventurous, and curious spirit, and enjoys sharing these traits with the rest of the world. What further proves this are his aforementioned friends and family. We have the likes of the famous Mickey Mouse, who's a reliable, kind-hearted guy, Goofy, another nice fellow, in spite of his clumsiness, Daisy Duck, his smart-mouthed but ultimately devoted girlfriend, his nephews Huey, Dewey, and Louie, who in spite of their mischievousness, are also experienced globetrotters and surprisingly level-headed. And perhaps the strongest of all, the wise, tough, self-made richest duck in the world, Scrooge McDuck, who makes Indiana Jones and Lara Croft look like chumps digging through a bag of Cracker Jacks by comparison. The only real drawback I can see after all this, and before I really dig into the other fictional characters vying to be hosts, is that Donald Duck's voice can be hard to understand. But if he can get through a whole short talking about mathematics of all things, or he has a debater to play off of, or if you're really, really concerned, he can use the Don Cheadle voice changer. I don't know if he really needs it, though, as while Don Cheadle is great, people have still been able to watch and enjoy Donald Duck for nearly 100 years at this point. So Donald Duck is extremely well-rounded, surprisingly personable, has great connections, and is the most skilled entertainer of the bunch. I've given a lot of compliments now, so here comes the requisite Ducko shit talks the opposing side, or sides, in this case, portion of the debate. To put it shortly, at least at first, here are the shortcomings of the other foes. Eric Cartman is not only extremely bigoted in every conceivable way possible, as seen numerous times throughout South Park, but also basically pure evil in general and often screws over his friends and manipulates people into nefarious schemes. He's funny on screen, but do we really want to put up with that as a group? He would only be popular in the drama sense, and would basically drag us all and our reputations down along with him. Nothing about this kid would be tolerable at all. You lot might try to slander him with this, but Donald Duck had a nightmare about being a Nazi, while Eric Cartman legitimately admires and wants to be Adolf Hitler. As for Too Much Coffee Man's list deranged cousin, Cuphead's whole thing is that he's a compulsive gambler and has to go on a big run-and-gun quest to solve his gambling debts. In reality, without Satan as a constant presence to deal with, he's just going to end up like MC Hammer. Poor guy. Ryu's flaws with this group are numerous, if less obvious than the other two at first glance. There are some things in Street Fighter 6 that help him more, but the main things I see going against him is that he's kind of a basic guy. He's mostly just concerned with fighting. His experience is mostly in fucking off to the woods away from society, punching logs or whatever it is, and trying to repress his knockoff Bruce Banner, Larry Talbot, Dr. Jekyll form. He develops surprisingly, well, in 5 sort of kind of, where he solves the whole thing off screen with the power of his own personality, which is to say, nothingness. A lot about the way Street Fighter V told its story is questionable. Street Fighter 6 is a little bit better from what I'm seeing, where rather than the closed-off hermit of the past, Ryu is finally feeling like he can train people, socialize, get on the news, and give interviews. But even then, his sole interest really is martial arts. Ryu is still a bit socially stunted and very focused on technical fighting aspects. Now, I don't think figuring out if Fall Guys or Among Us would make a better movie has much to do with fighting training. Another pertinent point, because I do a lot of fake fighting game rosters on my own time, and Ryu is default option, Brandon acted unreasonably excited for him, and that spiraled into a way too long-running and often very gross running gag where the group, and especially him, constantly simp and talk about pretty much just a bunch of nasty sexual fetish-tinged things, and I feel like if anyone were coming into a team where it's either that, or someone who is entirely sick of Ryu and loathes him now because of that, well, would you really want to join such a team? All of them are going to be way more of a liability, and in the latter case, not even that entertaining in comparison to Donald Duck. Donald Duck, I'd say, is overqualified for the job, but luckily for him, he's the only applicant I can remotely say that about.
Yeah, Cartman, do it! Damn shit! Respect my fucking authority! Yeah!
I get to debate for Cartman? Sweet! While this big-boned menace may seem like the last person you'd ever want to run a show with, I'm here to tell you that, among these 4 options, he really is the best choice. Let's see, where do I start? Well, to become a GGM debater, you have to know how to write a debate for yourself. And luckily for Eric, he is absolutely the most experienced of the 4 in this category. There's an episode where we see Cartman and Wendy work together in debate class to explain why the South Park flag should be changed. Cartman actually shows that he knows how to debate well, choosing to primarily attack his opponent's credibility, but also showing that he can find valid points in his favor with research. Even Wendy ends up impressed with his debating ability. Cartman's general knack for strategic planning will come in handy while preparing his debates, and since we know Cartman is good with words whenever he wants to convince people that he's right, he would actually be one of the strongest debaters on the show. But this is about more than just debating. If he's part of the show, he's gonna need to pull his own weight in other areas. Like editing, for instance. None of the other characters have shown any skill at video production, but Cartman absolutely has. He's created music videos, he edited an intro for his morning announcements, and made a movie about his time living with the Smurfs. He could definitely manage to edit for himself, so we don't have to do it for him. We saw in You Have Zero Friends that Cartman was able to host a successful podcast, so he should be good with Lightspeed or any other podcast we form on Galaxy Video. Time to bring back filming the unfilmed, you guys! Seriously! Cartman was also able to amass an incredibly large following with his own YouTube channel, Cartman Bra. So he already has experience creating YouTube videos and getting them to climb in viewership, which could be used to help make our channel more successful. Cartman is also an excellent motivational speaker, shockingly enough. He was able to motivate everyone to work together in Warcraft to defeat that one asshole when they originally just wanted to give up. Whenever we get into a creative rut, it's possible that Cartman can rally everyone together and get us back on track. Also, Cartman is the only one here who actually has the same knowledge on pop culture media that we all do. He knows World of Warcraft, Game of Thrones, Indiana Jones, and Batman, as well as other general superhero media that helped him inspire his superhero group. There's a longer list of stuff we know Cartman watches, but you get my point. Because South Park likes to call out or reference a lot of real things, Cartman will know many of the same characters that we do. Let's compare this to the others. Ryu doesn't watch TV, read comics, or play video games at all. He's a social recluse who would much rather train for tournaments than watch Gumby to see if he can save John Connor from the T-1000. That'd be a waste of time for him. Cuphead might know about some radio shows, but he doesn't have a TV or anything. Popeye exists in his universe, so maybe Cuphead could debate for him and a few other classic cartoons, but that's pretty much all he'll be able to do. For copyright reasons, Donald Duck has only ever been seen watching things owned by Disney. There's a lot of media that falls under that umbrella, but that still leaves a pretty massive gap in his knowledge. I know Donald and Ryu have met a lot of fictional characters, but there's a big difference between meeting someone and actually seeing all of their adventures on a TV screen. By watching the actual shows, Cartman will have a lot more knowledge on them, and will be able to cite specific moments in their history for his arguments. So, Cartman has the knowledge, he has the skills, he just doesn't have the manners. Like, at all! He's a fucking dick, and is absolutely one of the most offensive cartoon characters ever. You may worry that this would result in the entirety of Galaxy Video getting cancelled, but that's only if Cartman goes unfiltered. While Cartman is pretty offensive in front of his friends, we've seen him successfully put on a kind face if it's in the interest of whatever he's doing. He keeps up a kind facade while promoting Faith+1, and was able to become a successful YouTuber without any controversies. And in the more modern episodes, Cartman is clearly aware of cancel culture and tries to avoid getting canceled himself, to the point that he was incredibly concerned when Cupid Yee began praising Hitler, presumably because he wants to save face. Basically, if Cartman wants to be a GGM host, and understands that being offensive will get him kicked, he's more than capable of restraining himself for the public videos he'll be making. Really, the biggest issue we'll find by working with Cartman is that it's going to be very hard to make him concede when he's wrong. He's incredibly stubborn. But honestly, besides Ryu, I think they're all stubborn. Cuphead is just as childish, and will get into actual fights over minor disagreements, like who ate the last bit of ice cream. Donald is also known to flail around and actually explode in anger whenever he gets into disagreements. I've at least actually seen Cartman concede before, like when he gave up the pangolin for Stan. Ultimately, I see Cartman being the most stoked about this compared to the others. I'm sure we could eventually teach them how to do this show, but we would have to expose them to more media that they could actually talk about, and they may not be willing. You can't just force people to watch what you want them to. But the pieces for Cartman are all there, and since Cartman is willing to keep his behavior in check if it benefits him, he would be the best pick for this job, whether you'd like to admit that or not.
That's all, folks.
For every step back Ryu has taken, he's taken 10 forward. I know, we can all fixate and meander on his inability to go ham on a keyboard, but there's plenty more to this Street Fighter than what appears at first blush. It's Brandon, here to make a case for everyone's favorite fighting game protagonist. Ryu has accomplished plenty as a video game all-star that would make him a worthy candidate. Bro is literally like the king of crossovers, right next to Scooby-Doo and the Predator, be it other Capcom properties like Mega Man, Dead Rising, Asura's Wrath, or Monster Hunter, to other companies' brands like Marvel, Namco, Sega, SNK, Tatsunoko, or Disney. He's been everywhere, whether settling it in Smash, him dabbing and getting shot down in Fortnite, becoming a Transformer, aiding the Blue Blur and Blue Bomber and saving the Archie multiverse, picking it out with the Power Rangers or the residents of Springfield and Quahog. What hasn't this guy in a gi done? There's literally a whole Twitter account dedicated to the degrees of separation between Ryu and other fictional characters. And on that front, I see no issue with Hoshi entering our real world either. Are these crossovers canon? Arguably. But to me, this shows Ryu can gel well with and understand basically any side of pop culture. A big part of GGM is not just knowing the side you're batting for, but getting a general grasp on your opponent's character. And they can be from anywhere. Donald may not know how to rebuttal against some faces of adult action or horror like Pennywise of the T-1000. Cuphead naturally comes from the 1930s, and probably isn't up to date with the latest happenings of characters from the modern day like Byleth or Genocide Jack. And Cartman kind of lives in his own bubble and will only take parts in debates with characters he thinks are totally sweet. He was into Chimpokemon for like a day and that passed. And naturally, as a kid who tries to act more mature, he probably won't like that we use a ton of series that people wouldn't expect to take seriously, like Sesame Street or Casper the Friendly Ghost. What about Ryu though? Well, all the characters in series in Smash are covered. He's queued up with Ash Williams and Goku for some Fortnite. Oddly, of all the characters we've used, Scorpion and Sub-Zero he's yet to face. But face this challenge he will. Fortunately, not alone though. Anywhere Ryu falters, he's got some media and tech-savvy friends in the know. Whether it be the eccentric Ken Masters, heir to the Masters family, his pupil Sean Matsuda, to his biggest benefactor and own pupil Sakura. She's a huge fan of different stuff like Super Sentai and video games, and it could definitely help him find his footing. Of course, it can't be just Sakura doing it all. I have to debate for Ryu. And you may question what he's even going to get out of doing GGM, but honestly, I think having a social media presence and platform would be a good way for him to subliminally teach his morals and lessons of stoicism throughout. Not like turning the show into TED Talk or something, but say, if the scenario was about a character overcoming their inner demons and learning martial arts, he would excel. Let him debate for a character he's actually faced in battle, and his arguments will read more like personal anecdotes. Complex problem solving is paramount for both martial arts mastery and GGM. Surely. He's always looking for a new challenge, and what better way than one completely out of his element? Compare his way of going about this with all the others. Sure, he may not be the best at actual editing, but there are already debaters who don't edit themselves. Although I worry he may not be initially as malleable in terms of what scenarios he could handle, I still feel like his holdbacks aren't as damning as the other three. Obviously, Donald Duck's voice is going to be grating to listen to in 2-part videos that can reach the hour mark. You see, we can all shoot the shit because we've been friends for so long, but if Donald is genuinely pressured into a corner and just can't come up with anything to argue, I can totally see him going livid and not being able to cooperate. Eric is the only character here that I can genuinely see getting GGM cancelled. It's Eric Cartman, for crying out loud. Take that uncooperative spirit Donald has, and I think Cartman would refuse and throw tantrums unless he won every single episode he's on. In the latest season's episode titled Dick and Balls Hot Dogs, Cartman works at an ice cream shop and quits in less than an hour, coming up with the brilliant idea of starting his own restaurant. I can totally see him jumping ship and starting his own awful versus show, whether it be the vulgarity, the racism. Yeah, don't let Eric on the show, please. And for Cuphead, well, I think he'd be very fun to listen to. I think he's just too naive and hyperactive to ever sit down and work on something like GGM. When he was on Roll the Dice, Cuphead was far more starstruck than anything, and just kept eagerly playing into the crowd. He's also very gullible and can be easily gaslit. I struggle to see Cuphead ever winning a GGM if the person debating against him has even a crumb of confidence on their shoulder. He may be out of his element, but he's easily the most mature, and has the most life experience. He's a lot older than 2 of his opponents, let alone the rest of us, has traveled all around the world, and come Street Fighter 6 has completely tempered the Dark Hado, and is an enlightened martial arts guru. I should probably mention the elephant in the room though. Obviously the jokes about Ryu that plague our server, Biffweed's channel, etc. are gonna have to stop around him. No shit, but bringing that into this is a double-edged sword. I've seen the Ryu meme brought up so many times by people not even in our friend group. So seeing Ryu Hoshi himself actually get on the channel is going to be a huge deal. Much like our anti-FNAF agenda from way back when. Look who's coming to Multiverse Match. You're gonna be pretty hard-pressed to find anyone in the audience believing that these are the actual fictional characters coming to life. Also, I'm sure Ryu is an understanding enough person to forgive us. In general, I feel like Ryu has so much experience and flexibility as a character that makes him an obvious choice here. You can argue my Street Fighter is a blank slate, but that's just because he can achieve anything he desires, and thus anything the team and the fanbase will desire. I think, if there's any character you want to fill in for a galactic grudge match, you go with the World Warrior.
Come with me to the Inkwell Isles. It's just off the coast, maybe 29 miles, where there's more and there's in between. With Cuphead and Mugman, you'll see what I mean.
Hot
dog! I'm going for Cuphead again. But with this show now being out for several years now, it's weird to say, but he's practically a different character at this point. Remember when I talked about the first episode of the Cuphead show that had been leaked, and now the whole fucking show's out? Or me having to go off of 3-second clips of the DLC from the trailers, and that's now out too? Needless to say, there's a lot more for me to work with this time around, and it makes me all the more confident in Cuphead's chances on this show as a new host. It's a good day for a swell debate! First and foremost, I think Cuphead's enthusiasm for this craft has been demonstrated very well in the past, with him and Muggsy doing street performances, starting up a club with comedy and song routines, attempting to get the lead role in a play, and heck, when Cuphead went on Roll the Dice, he was absolutely stoked by the far reach his voice now had. Cuphead's a show-off and wants to be heard, and I think a YouTube channel could do this on a scale even bigger than everyone in this town. Literally anyone with a computer can now watch him. Cuphead's sheer confidence and stage presence was never kept a secret. The guy got on Roll the Dice and immediately stole the show, telling jokes, overshadowing dice, and showing confidence and charisma that I don't think anyone else here has. The only one comparable would be Cartman, but his charisma is less being charming and funny, and more being a horrible person who will go to extremes to get his point across. If he loses, whoever's going against him will probably be found dead the following week. Meanwhile, Cuphead doesn't really care when he loses.
Ah, nuts! I guess I lose.
Not only taking this loss fine, but the same went when he and Mugman were playing Rock and Sock and Robots. He was totally fine losing there too. He even walked out on Roll the Dice when he found out it was rigged. So if he wins, he'd want it to be fair and square. Meanwhile, Donald has a short fuse that would likely blow eventually, whether it be over losing, or his awful luck leading to a plethora of technical issues. Plus, I've seen him attempt to cheat several times in the past, and the less we say about Cartman in that regard the better. Cuphead, if anything, has supernaturally good luck. The dude was instructed to roll any number with a pair of die, and they fucking spontaneously combusted. Things are gonna go his way. A big point that you'd think would be against Cuphead would be that he isn't as adept in technology, and while this is true for him as soon as he's sucked into our world, Cuphead's adaptability has been demonstrated several times throughout the series. He immediately showed to be a gifted piano player with no practice. He got the hang of his powers and got to the point that he could beat the devil in less than a day. And he even taught himself to make explosives and constructed them within the walls of a prison, drawing out complicated plans for these escapes too. On top of all of this, Studio MDHR has released artwork of Cuphead on a computer playtesting his own game, and in the promotional material for Cuphead's Switch port, we see him and Muggsy gaming on the system. Sure, neither of these necessarily correlate to video editing, but it shows that Cuphead, in a situation where modern technology is put before him, won't face culture shock, and will simply need to be taught the ropes, which, as I said before, I think he could do with the quick learning he's demonstrated throughout the game and the show. I mean, do you really think Cuphead's gonna be flabbergasted by computers when he's from a world with sentient giant robots? Dude's been around Tesla cars before, he'll be fine. Another thing that Cuphead has that Ryu nor Cartman have is the ability to enter movies. Being able to meet the characters in question will give him a much better understanding of them. Sure, Cartman's met many fictional characters, but these aren't generally the most accurate representations of them. So while yes, he's not aware of many characters, his love of comics, radio shows, and games make me think he'll be ecstatic to learn about them. And while Donald can enter films too, the likelihood that he'll be understood by the characters in them is pretty low. Not to mention, unlike Ryu, Cuphead can actually draw, able to redraw his brother's face absolutely perfectly, and we see him animating for his own game. Oh, and speaking of his brother, along with the more intelligent Mugman, Cuphead, after saving the Inkwell Isles, wound up on good terms with all of its residents, including Jimmy the Great, a wish-granting genie, who Cuphead has shown the ability to call at any point during the game. I am aware that Cuphead is from the 30s, and as such, wouldn't be familiar with modern media, but he's appeared in games like Cook Serve Delicious, which has a plethora of indie characters, like Shovel Knight, Jacket from Hotline Miami, and the Gang Beasts. He's met the Geico Gecko, and Popeye did a crossover with Cuphead too. Plus, you can see Bimbo and Flippy the Frog in the background of the series. Another point that's been brought up though is Cuphead's short attention span. I've already brought up that he's actually pushed through a hell of a lot, but even in smaller scale cases, Cuphead took up the piano and promised a reward, and stayed outside waiting for Ludwig all night. The difference here is that this is something I can actually see Cuphead being interested in. As I said before, he was enthusiastic about performing in 2 episodes of the show, and backed up Dice, running a club simply for the sake of getting him back on his feet. It's here that we see a more focused side of him too. He's been seen reading and drawing for an extended period of time too. I refer you back to the artwork of him animating. I mean, just think about Cuphead's animation process. If he has enough patience to do that, that, I think he can handle GGM. So ultimately, while he's eccentric and not the most focused, Cuphead's no stranger to buckling down and getting shit done. He's artistically inclined, charismatic, able to accept loss far better than a majority of his competition, and has passion that I don't think we see in the others. And that's a declaration I'm more than happy to double down on.
Hey boys, how's that fish?
Thank you for watching Galaxy Grudge Match all these years. Wow, I can say that and mean it a bit. But for real, thank you all, and I hope you enjoyed this anniversary special.
I am not going to wait however many weeks it takes to get part 2 of this video out. So long, friends. I'm gonna go freeze myself.
Max giving himself feats again. If you want to see more from us, why not consider inserting some quarters into our Patreon? And in the meantime, be sure to check out our other series from this half-decade-long journey. We've got Galaxy Grudge Match Mini, Galaxy Grudge Match Lightspeed.
Thank you all so much for watching and commenting for 5 years now. It's been a wonderful journey. So, here's to the future, including part 2, which will be coming your way very soon. Bye bye now.